And well, welcome back to Wall Tactics. We're here to talk about the rise of the Green Tide. The boys are back in town. Let's start seeing them Green Tides remaking their emergence, my boys. So today we're gonna go over the stats and the facts like always on WAAAGH Wednesday. So the Orks actually seem to be doing somewhat well this week. So there is hope for the Great WAAAGH, as many lessons have been learned going into Nexus. And before we talk about Nexus, let's talk about our sponsor, the Baron of Dice, who have actually helped us actually do our paint competition. So if you want to enter the paint competition, check out the Discord, or if you want to check out Baron of Dice, because they have awesome dice that have helped us out to do our, paint competitions, I recommend you check them out. So that's Baron of Dice. So the boys are back, but so are the Baron of Dice, because nobody likes taxes. So let's get back to the stats and the facts. So for the stats and the facts, boys are sitting at a 46% win rate for the weekend. So Orks are sitting at a 46% win rate. That's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Of course, we've actually seen a bit more of an appearance, a resurgence. I wouldn't say the player base is too high with 27 players as a whole, but there has been some diversity between the detachments. So everybody seems to be deciding they just want to play what they want to play, which is the exact approach we want to go into as an Orc player when you're going into what the odds are against you. So 10 of those 27 people were playing War Horde, to be expected, and they had the best win rate with 51%. Then we had The Hunt with 4 players, not really any placings or anything, but they did have 48% win rate, so they were able to get some wins in. Green Tide is where we see with the 48% win rate with only the 3 players, but they did well. We have Cult of Speed, 1. Bully Boys with only 43% win rate, which is unfortunate, but it was only 2 players, so you can't extrapolate too much from that. And then Dread Mob with 7 players with a 38% win rate. Like I always say, Dread Mob is just one of those factions, detachments that's going to catch you a little off guard with the numbers, because a lot of the time people just bring whatever they want. It's a little meme-ish. It takes some, I'd say a little bit of tactics to actually play Dread Mob successfully and how you actually want to do it. So people just bring whatever they want. They seem to just have fun with it. I think that's totally fine as well, being able to do Morgs and Gorks and Killer Cans and whatever. So at the same time, we've seen Dread Mob do very well at events as well. Shout out to Brandon, who also did well this past weekend with the cool Dread Mob list. But to go along with the stats that we look at the singles, I like to also look at the faction versus faction. So we're going from 626 24 to 904 for the actual date. We're looking at the stats as what factions actually go into Orks quite well. The reason we look at this is not to be poo-poo on Orks. This is because we want you to know if you're playing a league, if you're planning to go RTTs and stuff like that. Knowing what factions are actually a bit harder for you, that way you can study them and know that they actually have tools to beat you, is another way that you can kind of get an advantage when you're going into your bit list building, archetype, stuff like that, reading your meta. So we have Leagues of Voltan as one of the hardest matches for Orcs, right alongside Death Guard and Drakari. Of course, we see the Death Watch, but Death Watch is gone forever. Emperor's Children, that's a little bit weird. But I do want to talk about the 3 that stand out, even though there's quite a few that are sitting still in the good low 40s. Leagues of Voltan, with their odd toughness of infantry, getting all the way up to toughness 6 on those infantry, having a lot of access to 2-up armor saves, with Armor of Contempt, being able to put oaths on multiple good Orc units and actually downright killing them fully successfully, scouting into the middle of the field with Transports 9. Orcs don't really trade much well with them. And Leagues of Voltan just have this weird volume of damage where it's also just enough volume, yet just enough strength and AP with lethal access, sustain access, that you can kind of really get off with them. Of course, you get +1 to wound on stuff, so that makes up for those weaker guns as well. It just becomes overwhelming sometimes for Orcs to actually chew through that in a reasonable manner. Death Guard being able to actually plant Nurglings alongside -1 ballistic skill, -1 weapon skill, that really compounds to being highly effective against Orcs, which is why, sometimes I've actually suggested playing Dread Mob, is because you get to avoid some of these interactions that we're talking about that we actually are on the losing end of, right alongside Drakari, where they have a lot of transports, yet Orcs don't have a lot of shooting. And I know it takes pedally shooting. Your flash hits hypothetically could kill some of the Drakari transports. When they don't, though, and you're running into 27 Dark Lances and you're playing your silly Dread Mob list, and you brought a bunch of Killer Cans and you're running into 20 Dark Lances, don't be surprised that they disembark all your units and then charge them and pick them up. That's kind of how it's built out when you actually don't get invulns, which is common for Orks, to get good invulns at least throughout the whole game army-wide. It's just Drakari ends up having tools to actually beat Orks, and it really catches you off your guard, like your first time playing them. You do have to do some studying. They play the game in their own manner. It is still like a skills experience kind of check. Space Wolves, Blood Angels, of course, just those real high impact Space Marine armies that can kind of take the initiative from us. Stack armor content with some of their Feel No Pain units or just durable units. Overall, we can still beat them when you're playing War Horde. When you're playing the other Orc detachments is where these units become hard, right? Say you're playing like a Speed Wall, you can really end up getting run over by Space Wolves, Blood Angels. If you're playing a Dread Mob, you can get run over by Blood Angels when you if you don't have enough screens, and if you're running simply Gorkanauts and Morkanauts where you give them one nice big target they can run into and automatically destroy. Right alongside Tyranids, which are actually hard and problematic for a lot of Orc players too, because we don't trade well until they're monsters. They're actually making us take Battle Shock does affect us. People really look down on this Tyranid army, the Shadow of the Warp army-wide ability, but against Orcs, it's quite effective. Our units have bad leadership for the most part. And the ones that do have leaders, and the leaders can still fail it, and they're really reliant on stratagems, and they're quite expensive units. So then, when it's the Wall turn, the Tyranid player combats the Wall turn with the Shadow of the Warp, and that can just throw all of the Orc players' plans right out the window, which is another unit reason why you play Dread Mob, right? We have Necrons, Adeptus Custodes, Adeptus Sororitas, Thousand Suns, Tau. These are all armies that Orcs do have abilities, and armies that can be detachment rules that can beat them. You can definitely put your pedal to the metal or run up over a Thousand Suns player and really catch them off guard and put a lot of pressure. Or you can take out Adeptus Custodes players because you brought a bunch of mech guns and you have gas and you end up surviving fights and all those different things. But you have to know their army rules. You have to bring the right kind of list as well. That's why Orcs are really on like a learning curve, on a bell curve for how you grade them and score them and kind of rank them. Hence art before, and that's fine, because Orcs are one of those complex armies that gets overlooked for the most part. Yet people forget that we are those armies that GW still does charge us in points for our combined arms factor, trying to shoot on fives. They charge us those points for that, because if they didn't, our units wouldn't be as expensive they are sometimes. Therefore, we're trying to take advantage of the bad and effective shooting we're doing with the still somewhat unreliable combat that we get. Therefore, people have been looking at Dread Mob or other detachments than just War Horde. Also, it's been like our army rule for like 3 editions, right? The Stain Sixes. So I can get why people don't want to play that right now. But that's okay, because overall Orcs are doing all right. So let's take a look at some of the Orc players that did do well. Of course, these were the paint competition winners. Shout out to those gits. But first off, we're going to start off, and a shout out to the chat. Sorry, shout out to the chat. Is the Green Tide rising? Yes, it is. Whoa! Shout out to the chat. So I'll interact with the chat periodically in between these lists we're going to go over and such. I'll try not to drag on too long, my boys, because nobody wants to see that. So, yeah, so we have the list up. All right, make sure I didn't mess that up. All right. So we have my boy, Courtney Rhodes, who came in 15th place at the Super All-Star 2 Hellstorm Major Tournament. So he did go. I just passed him up right now. I was looking at him. He did go 4-2. So let me take you back to that before we look at his list. He did go 4-2, number 15. I want to take a look at him because he was running the nice Green Tide you get. So I know a lot of guys are down on it. I was one of those people who's a little bit down on it. It really did get nuked, but it does have its matchups that they can do well. It just comes down to, does the army have the tools to beat you, and sometimes the mission as well. So we have War Boss, a War Boss with Ruckus Warcaller. We have another War Boss, and then a Weird Boy. Quite light on the characters, and I'm quite surprised that there aren't a bunch of Painboys. I mean, how uncommon is that? Usually whenever you see a Green Tide list, you're almost always seeing Painboys on them. I'm quite high on the Painboys as well when I bring my Green Tide list. So look at a Green Tide list and be like, no, we're not bringing any Painboys. Ooh, that's a bit hot. That's a bit unique. That's a true take right there when someone comes at the uniquely. Though I'm not highly fully against it. It's quite expensive, guys. A Painboy is 80 points for a 3-wound model. Talk about any other 80.3 wound model. I mean, that's kind of silly. He is quite pricey, so I get why he had decided not to bring them, right? So then we have the Weird Boy. Weird Boy is pretty nice if you're trying to score secondary, stage up position units and bricks. So we do have just one simple 10-man unit of Beast Snaggle Boys, no character. He just said, I'm just bringing that. But that's because he does have a kill rig, so he did want to put something in there. I don't blame him for not doing that. That's actually a great idea. 4 units of 20 boys, so he wasn't completely scared of, running into Call the Horde. Excuse me, I'm having a brain fart. The Call the Horde was actually going to be a huge factor. A lot of the times people still don't want to pick fixed, even if it's right in their face. So I understand people being cautious of it. It can happen on certain missions. If it's Purge the Foe and you're already getting primary for trying to outkill you, don't be surprised if they try to get at that point. Yeah, if you look, he did pull back on Assassinate. So he could lean more into Call the Horde because you're not going to have 2 innate kill secondaries that you can pick for fix. Therefore, he was defending himself from that kind of farm factor of points, which is what you have to do if you're going to try to counter these nerfs that happen to your detachment, right? 2 trucks, a battle wagon, 2 5-man units of flash kits, a simple basic grot unit, 1 kill rig rattle, we've talked about that Snaggle Boy unit that goes in it, 2 5-man units of power claws, and then a Storm Boy unit. So of course we can see with that truck right away 2 what we like to call SWAT teams, right? You take a truck, you take 2 individual units of orcs that can function independently, and you put them inside those units. Surprisingly enough, you could argue that he would consider in some matchups putting a war boss into these 5-man units and not even having these 20-man units of boys have a war boss. If he's just using them for fodder, just to get chewed up, not really punch with them and then run around the field with his kind of punching units and try to delete the things that he can, there's a chance that he really did do that too and didn't care to put the orc war boss in that unit. And if he did, it could be on the Ruckus Warcaller unit, simply that it's a 20-man unit. The flexibility here comes down to the player themselves, which is something I really like to see. So Ruckus Warcaller would allow you to still take advantage of the boys for their 20-man unit, so that's probably where they would go. But the 2 other war boss units could argue that they go into those knobs units. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and only 1 Storm Boy unit. Only 1 Storm Boy unit. Truck's really gonna have to do their work. Of course, the flash kits are just an excellent SWAT team addition. So let's look at what a Green Tide list does with some transports, because that's pretty much what it is, right? You're bringing Green Tide units, you're bringing SWAT teams, you're bringing battle wagons. So keep that in mind when you're going into these matchups and what we talked about with some of those factions versus factions that are difficult for orcs. Ooh, I just showed his list again. Sorry. Hiccups, boys. Hiccups are trying to fight me. The chaos is trying to get to me. All right, starting off hot with Chaos Knights. We ain't nothing but a war dog, is what their list is called. We have War Dog Soccer, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Brigands, and then 6 Carnivores, and 2 units of Nurgling stocked by a Sloppity Bio Piper. Interestingly enough, it really does come down to sometimes how this Nurgling unit was used. If they were smart enough to put them near their Carnivores, their Brigands, stuff like that, to make the Orcs ineffective at literally punching and killing them, there's a chance those 20-man units might not kill. But the fact that you have an access to a strat to reroll wounds means just by pure attrition, pure volume of punches as an Orc player, especially on the wall, you can shoot through some of these units. They don't really kill you that well when you have your invuln up, your 5-up invuln on. So they can definitely focus you down. If you're sitting right in front of the War Dogs and Carnivore units with your 20-man units of boys, actually they can wear you down. But the difference is you can get the initiative on them as long as you're, on this matchup, I would actually consider using Storm Boys for screening, not even really putting them in deep strike because they might not score for you. In some matchups, you can actually put them in the way so they can get the initiative on your 20-man units. If that's up to you as the Orc player, you look at the terrain, if it's worth it, if you think you could drop somewhere, what the deployment is. But these are the factors that you would go into, that you got to slow these War Dogs, chew them through attrition, score out on primary, and actually be able to win that. It is a kind of thought process check. So the fact that he came up on that with that 84-point win is pretty nice. It's not an easy win because they have a bunch of OC, yet this is where I was saying those SWAT teams can come into play, where a flash kit plus knob unit, those guys themselves can tear down War Dogs, Carnivores, stuff like that. The Stalker. So pretty sick to see that. Love it when you see just boys in volume. You can really kind of survive that. You just have to stage up well, not let them put all of their units right. Because if they just focus all those Brigands And small alarms fire from the carnivores into a 20-man blend unit that doesn't have a Painboy. Yeah, of course that's getting picked up quite reliably. Yet if you're in the terrain, you're staged up, they only pick up a couple shots from you. You regen a couple guys for a CP, and then you move up on them. That's where you get the advantage. You reroll wounds with that unit. You're touching 2 different war dogs. You have the knob here. Maybe in this case, you put a war boss in there. The war boss here, they reroll their wounds. It can just start unfolding for them. And I've had, there's a chance. I've literally had it in games where war dog was, war dog was already hurt, and a 5-man unit flash was able to finish it off with lethals and sustains. So SWAT teams are pretty potent. I promise you. Then we look at his second matchup. We went into Death Guard. I'll tell you single-handedly, this can be a tough matchup as an Orc player when you're running Green Tide. So the transfers would help in this case, though. Because remember, he has a battle wagon, too, which would survive, help him in that chaos list as well matchup. He has a Biologist Putrefier, 2 of those, 2 Foul Blight Spawns, a Lord of Contagion, and Typhus. So we're looking for the fight first. We're looking for the crit 5s right here, and the 2 10-man units of Plague Marines. So we're getting these killy dudes, 2 killy bricks. These are problematic for your boys units as they have nasty flamers, nasty lethal potential, combined arms factor, safe inside of a trance. We have 2 rhinos. A Death Guard Chaos Spawn, a Cultist unit, another Cultist unit, of course, really just to sit in the backfield and screen. A lot of units deep strike, so they're really just trying to protect that. You do have, that's where Weird Boy comes into play, guys, that you're like, I'm going to run down these cultists. You have a Deshroud Terminator unit, another 3-man unit, a Deshroud Terminator unit, 3 limited blow drones, a Poxwalker, 2 Nurglings units, and 2 Carnivores. Ooh, so how these Nurglings, like I said before, huge fit play factor on the Death Card player. He might just, take things too literal and say, I'm going to make one to your armor save. That makes no sense here. So, of course, he's going to say -1 to your ballistic skill, weapon skill. But where he's putting these Nurglings to stack that aura of -1 to hit makes a huge difference. If they're too exposed, the flash gears can get off. The battle wagon might actually help you in that case to shoot a little bit, right? Deleting these Nurglings as soon as possible is definitely a factor in this matchup. Or you might just start bouncing. Of course, the blow drones really help them cover the distance to get their contagion down the field. Your war bossings can shoot through that, so it's not like it's always going to hold you up, but it can definitely hold you up if you just roll unlikely. So the battle wagon would definitely be a factor here for you to be able to stage up in the mid table and actually get the initiative on the rhinos. Trying to trap them and not kill them so their units cannot get out is the biggest factor here as an Orc player. If he was able to pull this off, I can see how that totally swings the game. I don't personally know. I'm just telling you how this comes into play. You do have to worry about Typhus. He does mortal wounds. You have a Lord of Contagion to help his shooting potential here too, and other stuff. But for the most part, the combined arms of the Plague Marines is the biggest deal. And once you kill them, he's kind of run out of a lot of teeth. He has like 3. He has Terminators. They don't have OC. They're not really going to kill the boys fast enough if the invulns are rolling about average. So you can just run up, mark a bunch of different objectives, counter attack with your SWAT teams, really get into play, get stuck in where you need them with the 5-man units to punch away maybe Terminators. It wouldn't be reliable, but on the wall, if you're staged up already, you could do it. I do like that you have shooting here. The battle wagons allow you to not get indirect fired. Now, I guess actually he doesn't have. I don't even know why I said that. He doesn't have the tanks. Sorry, I'm so used to being on the list. He does have the carnivores though. I always say carnivores are slept on as like a little crappy skirmish unit. Excuse me, crappy skirmish unit. So this was actually a potent list, and I am quite impressed that he ended up getting a 98-point win. So I don't know what was going on with that Death Guard player. Very surprised the matchup went so one-sided there. But hey, it can happen. Like skills matter. Skills matter. It really doesn't matter what the stats necessarily say. It's not like you're going to automatically lose. Going into his next matchup, he went to Drakari. So that's why I always show faction versus faction, and then I show you these list guys. The reason why I want to always show you kind of like the big picture of the stats, faction versus faction, and then I start showing you the actual context of someone's win path is to not only show the strength of schedule they had to show the value of their list, but also show possibly that there was a skill curve, show that not all the time generalities are absolute. So even though I show them to you, it doesn't mean you should do doom and gloom. It's good for everybody to get full context, especially if you're a newer player and you're looking into this and you get intimidated. No, that's why I'm showing you exceptions exist, and these are some of the exceptions, and that's a good thing for us. And I always want to talk about that. And then we have Drakari. So with Drakari, we have the Archon, so 2 Archons. And just we said with Death Guard, it can be a very good game. With my green tide list, very good games as well. Very, very close, like 1-point games. It comes down to some dice rolls. It comes down to what you do with your, like I said, transfers make a huge difference. I didn't even have a wagon. I can see how a wagon makes a huge difference. Tagging units, taking Plague Marine units, holding them in place, holding the drones in place, still staying on transports, blocking stuff off objectives. Death Guard isn't great at killing transports. That's only like the Carnivore can like punch the battle wagon, but then you can kind of get out, and that's probably where your knobs or just 20-man unit of boys can just spill out and start tagging stuff. Very high skill game that was that Death Guard game, which I love to see because really can show that my boy was doing great with this list. High skill level coming from my boy here with Courtney, I think his name was. Yeah, Courtney. Just making sure. Well, don't be lying out here. So in his third game, he has Drakari with Sky Splinter Assault Force. 2 Archons. Then he has a Beast Master. Beast Master and other like detachments. Let's say you're playing Dread Mob, you're playing War Horde, and you don't want to get stuck in your deployment zone and just trapped there by standing there with your trucks getting in the way, or your big kilograms unit or whatever. This Beastmaster unit can run up and move block you, yet against a bunch of boys, you're just given an elite prep, like leapfrog units they could run and charge to. So if the Dracari player gave this unit up right because they scout and they move 12, that was super problematic. He shouldn't have done that, but we'll see. He has Lilith Tech Brash, a Cabalite Warrior, another Cabalite Warrior, 2 Witches Squads, 2 Raiders, 4 Venoms. Right, it was 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Incubus, a max unit, followed by 2 5-man units of Incubus. They act kind of like the knobs that we have, right? Mandrakes for infiltration. So he has 2 infiltrating Mandrake units. Again, how they play them, if they're not used to playing Orks, you can run up and swing without, you can re-roll, you can get additional charges. You can end up making distances that really throw armies off when they get those charges off. Sometimes if people are just positioning wrong, it's a huge factor there too. You got to consider that in the matchups. And if Orcs went first, we have 1, 2, 3 units of Scourges. Luckily, the only real targets they have are 2 trucks and a wagon. You can be quite safe. You can get quite safe. You will have to hope to make some saves, of course, on your wagon as well sometimes, because it is quite big with the roller and such, which he was using. But I love to see it. In this matchup, it does matter who of you of was he able to leapfrog here, and how much initiative did the Dark Eldar player get? Knowing that the Orc can kind of start walking right up to him and say, "I dare you, let's go," is huge. Now that the Orc doesn't have to solely rely on the 5-up invul on the wall, meaning he's just saying, well, I'm staging up, and when I call the wall, I'm getting you. The Dracari player kind of has to go, I'm coming after you, and they jump at you, and they try to punch you, and they fail to kill your whole unit. You're making too many 5-up, you spike 2 luckily, and then you clean them up, walk forward some more, consolidate onto objectives. It's a bullying factor. And also, like I said, they have a lot of scouting and infiltrating. I'm worried that Dracari player, not worried, I mean, that's good for us. I'm thinking the Dracari player allowed him to kind of leapfrog into him from that. So in this 4th matchup, I don't know, but let me know if you're out here. I'd like to know, Courtney. So then he had his 4th matchup, Adeptus Sororitas. So my boy's hitting the hard strength of schedule right off the bat. He has Bringers of Flame. There's a Canonist, another Canonist, Dialogus, Palatine, and the Triumph of St. Catherine. Is every list just bringing Triumph? Is what I think, right? It's like every list is bringing the Triumph of St. Catherine. We have a Battle Sister Squad, followed by 3 Emulators, 3 Castigators. I'm going to show you their data sheets real quick. You get Dominion Squad, 3 Dominion Squads. Love that you can break them up and combat squad them to effective units and then trash units, because you could just split that unit into 2 5-man units. Having a lot of units is super annoying also as Orcs, because we don't like trading as much. Flash hits are our best trades. Then we have Seraphim, and then a 10-man unit of Seraphim for that deep strike, killing carnage, at least on one of those units in the Bringer of Flame. So let's take a look at their data sheets real quick, just because people might not be familiar. Sisters are a hard army to collect. They're a little expensive. You might not see them, a little niche, but competitively, they're all over the place. So you'll have Emulators. Actually, I should have made sure I pulled up. They have armored heavy bolter. That's what I thought. Okay, very simple. So I have a bunch of data sheets up here. Get. So we have in your shooting phase, essentially you shoot an enemy, whatever when it was hit by this unit, they don't get the benefit of cover. And then you look over at a castigator, and you can actually then stack that with additional AP. So not only that, so you're getting the miracle dice for kind of some automatic outcomes that you would not want to happen with high damage and such. They can disembark you, they can kill you. Highly potent for covering the distance, volume of damage, stuff like that. Really good combined arms army when you meet them in the table. Yet if you're the orc player and this unit doesn't actually have the combat output, you don't see the not the retributors, the little crazy girls that are fighting. Chat, tell me what that is. I forgot that one unit call off the top of my head. They don't have those volume of punches, and that matchup against orcs, that sucks. Even those penitentials, that sucks. He doesn't really have that. I can see that being a huge factor in this matchup because I've seen it all the time on War Games Live on streams, and whenever I've seen these sister players, when they don't have those dedicated, like a Morgan Vol, they don't have that sister unit that has those people that feel no pains to get punched. I forgot high volume, not Repentia, but a different unit. Those are the Chainsword girls. The other ones, the ones that are like little pain freaks. Either way, they when you don't have that, you end up getting kind of bullied by orcs, and I can see that's definitely how this matchup went because he had a good score on them too with 81. Now, what happened in his two last games where he ended up losing, where he still scored well? So let's take a look at those because we want some context here, right? Because surprisingly enough, yes, he lost to Gene Stealers. No shame in that, because when you run into Gene Stealers, it's happened to me where I was like, oh gosh, what's happening here? Luckily, things went my way, but that's that doesn't mean I wasn't on my toes. And this guy was playing for real, because remember, he's already gone 4-0 at this point. This is a legit Gene Stealer player, because that means he was 4-0 at this point. So he has a Kellamorph. He has 3 of them, actually. Those Kellamorphs and little lone ops, when you get within range of them, I think it's about 12 inches, they get to shoot as if it's the shooting phase with their 6 shots at strength 6 minus 2/1 damage. So they're picking off your boys when they're moving around the field pretty reliably. You have a Reluctant Saboteur, I believe a mortal wound potential from that person. We have 2 units of the hybrids with auto pistols, followed by 3 units with the hand flamers. Oh, 4. I lied. 6 units with the hand flamers, 6 of the 5 units with the hand flamers. Of course, you can see how that can start getting affected into boys. And yes, it was Arcoflagellants. Thank you, Jim Jones. That's my boy. We got Neophyte hybrids, followed by 2 Goliath trucks and 3 Achilles Ridge Runners. I'll show you those units data sheets real quick. For their data sheet ability, anytime the unit is within combat of them and falls back, they have to take a desperate escape test, and they subtract 1 for those battle shock tests that they do take. This unit was taking the incinerator clearance, so it's a flamer, strength 6 minus 1. 2d6 flamers quite often at the higher end of the meta between land raiders and transports that bring them. You got bolt predators, you got so many different things. So you do have to be aware of that. Followed by the Achilles Ridge Runner that you have over here, which after it shoots you, then other Gene Stealer units give you AP. Not huge factor into like the boys, but remember, there are battle wagons here that you're slowly trying to chew down, so you get access to the squishy boys in the middle, because typically that battle wagon wants to walk up stage. You shoot at the wagon, you don't really kill it, the boys get out, and then they're in your face. If they can pull that very simple strategy off, it's a huge factor. If they can't, then that puts them on their back foot right off the get. So then we have 2 Adelan Jackals, like I said, and then 3 Goliath Rock Grinders, which I just showed you. So these guys do have the volume, do have a dumb amount of units, and I would like to see the mission. Of course, these units can come back to life once you kill them, and the boys don't necessarily do that, so having units that you can focus fire down can matter greatly. So I'd like to hear more about that happen, because he scored pretty well with a 79-point win. It's lost right there. But then he went to his next game, and he ended up losing that one too with another quite respectable score of 77. He went into another Sisters of Battle unit. So another Bringers of Flame unit. They have Canoners with Jump Pack, Morgan Vol. See the difference in this unit. A Palatine with Righteous Rage, another fighting unit. Saint Celestine, another fighting unit. And then Triumph of St. Catherine, followed by 3 emulators. As we spoke about, the emulators giving you the ignore benefit of cover. which is beneficial against the wagon, against the trucks. If the boys are getting like Stormbolter shots, the boys can stand in cover and take 4-up saves sometimes. This takes that option away, which does matter. Then we have 2 castigators for the AP, offset that minus reduce AP by 1 that the battle wagon has. It normally makes it so crazy. So normally the battle wagon's like, all right, I am ignoring AP minus 1 and I get cover. In this case, none of those exist. So now you're just taking straight AP to the face. Very, really more reliable to kill you. And this guy actually has the combined arms factor with sisters with fighting. He has the 2 Dominion squad. Then we have the Paragon war suits, followed by just 1 brick of that Killy hand flavor squad, and then a Sister Novitiate squad. He probably just had 100 points left. Wanted some units for wanted some OC screening, do all the types of things alongside these double Dominion squads for action units. This is more potent. This is more what you see with the Sisters of Battle with combined arms. It doesn't have the Cascaders, still surprising. Still quite a respectable unit. Bringers of Flames are just like, we will meet you and bring the actual volume, re-rolls, damage, reliable outcomes. All in all, great job by Courtney Rhodes. We'll look over his green tide list one more time because I do appreciate that he didn't just stick with all characters and all boys. He found some kind of balance here. So he went 3 war bosses, 1 with Ruckus Warcaller to stick with 120-man units of boys. We have a weird boy. Hypothetically, you can put those with boys as well because they can jump around the battlefield to score, get in the way, kind of put pressure alongside the wagon. Then they have 1 unit of Beast Nagas for that kill rig that's on the list. Of course, that kill rig also takes all these boys to another strength threshold and possible lethals, right? Because there was that kill rig on this list for the last cannon effectiveness, for the auto hitting in that case, the Beast Naga boys. So there's a bunch of different outcomes, factors that actually comes into play, like with your Kari, where you can pop the transports in that case. But all in all, there's still weaknesses to this. I just love that he was able to offset it with a lot of these different units. He has 4 of the 20-man units of boys, 2 trucks for his SWAT teams. We know how valuable SWAT teams are. Been around since the index, but he also stuck the battle wagon in there. He's doing that because since the boys can simply walk into the mid presence with sheer volume of boys and the durability from the re-rolling 1s and having 5-up invul the entire time and having Painboys stacked in there, he's like, I have to pay for the wagon so I can stage up into the middle. A kill rig pushes a flank, gives some boy units +1 strength. They're re-rolling wounds. It pushes them in a different strength wounding bracket. Makes a huge difference. If they get lethal, it's even better. Then you have, of course, flash kits and knobs to actually punch out those problematic, surgically striking and counter punching these units that are dwindling your boys as your boys are scoring your points. So shout out to my boy Courtney Rhodes. Great job with that list. A lot of different stuff that we like to talk about on the channel that are found here. You can see this is just a knowledge base, a good consensus of good ideas that are found in a lot of different archetypes. You've seen this in like a War Horde. You've seen very similar things, but now so many boys. I'm talking about with his support roles, right? With the SWAT team, with the wagon, with the kill rig. You've seen that a lot in War Horde. He took that fundamental support, and he decided to stick that behind the green tide, and he made it work. That's what really caught my appeal with this list because it showed that he had a really good fundamental understanding of what the Orks typically do, what units are playing more of a support role right now to make the difference in these fights, and he added that, and that was fantastic. So shout out to Courtney Rhodes. So next, let's take a look at the next skit with my boy Ivan Andres, and here we are with a War Horde. So let me look at the chat real quick. What you guys are saying? Yeah, and it was the Argoflagellants. Yeah, Jim Jones. Okay, that's how you heck yeah. And yeah, it's time. Whoa, let's go. And yes, awesome forehead by me. Jim Jones again. If they're already out, it's also a good technique to charge them with the Rhino and pile into Plague Marines. Yeah, if you can charge the Rhino, if you can pile into them if they're already out. Sometimes they get out to try to get the initiative on you. Yeah, that's a good factor as well. Just pile into them. There are ways to deal with them. If they start making you -2 to hit, though, it starts getting rough, right? It does start getting rough. So then it becomes just dice rolls. Hopefully I hit you enough. Power calls are essentially hitting you horribly. 5s and 6s. The boys are hitting you on 5s. It's like if the worst loss is not in the unit, so it gets kind of crazy. But that is a huge factor. I'm just saying there's so much stuff that made me really think that was a high skill game with that death card. But good shout out there. So then we have Ivan Andres with his 6th place ranking at this Las Voz de Hordes Open. the voice of Horus open is what it's called in Spanish. So here he got 6th place. He did get a couple 100s. He did have a lower scoring second round, but then he ended up losing only in the last round. So no submarining, straight up sticking at the top for the most part. So let's take a look at Ivan's War Horde list because it has some of the stuff that we know are fundamental with a little bit of a twist. I like it. So we have 2 beast bosses to ride along those 2 kill rigs. We have 2 war bosses, a war boss in mega armor who is the warlord. Oh gosh, I started to burp. Who is the warlord with Follow Me, lads. Love to see that. Really offset to his slowness. Then you have Here We Go access there. Bam, just start really chucking up the field with the mega knobs. 2 units of Beast Snagger Boys for those beast bosses. 2 trucks, followed by 2 5-man units of Flash Kits. 2 small units of Gretchen. 2 kill rigs. Love the kill rigs for that strength threshold. But here we go. A commando unit here making his appearance again for that mid-table presence in Nexus. The Mega Knobs are with 2 twin kill saws, super important for our weaknesses right now. 2 5-man units of Power Claws, and then 2 Stormboy units. Here we go with the SWAT teams, as we can see. SWAT teams remaking their appearance yet again. Concurrent pattern. If you're getting knobbed, if you're getting Flash Kits, boys, see, you don't really need to necessarily spam and buy max amount of these units. It's really nice to see that you could just take them down to smaller factors, play them more surgically, more responsibly, and counter punchy in that way, right? The kill rigs, I love that because they actually do take knobs to the next threshold. They take Flash Kits to the next strength threshold, and their stupid volume goes up. But also commandos. You can end up taking commandos and making them actually punchy, alpha strikey kind of unit. The enemy can't overwatch them, so they can just walk right up into them. The kill rigs can just move up the battlefield quickly on one flank behind the mandos. You fishtail them. You give the knobs and the breacher ram another pib of strength, maybe even lethal, and then those boys go off. Really, really cool in that case that you can really think that way if you want to. Your Storm Boys can even get up to different strength thresholds if you want in that case. So your Storm Boys can run out and be a fighting unit. I don't say you always do that. I actually might make videos about all of these individual data sheets because there's a lot of niche ways you can play them, and it's not so simple as put your Storm Boys into deep strike. There are some circumstances you can call with the kill rig potential here to get them to a strength number that really matters to a wounding outcome that you care for. And feels good if you're trying to clean some stuff up. So I like the toolage behind this list. There's a lot of killing potential. The las cannons make it the War Tower last version of las cannons of auto hitting las cannons gives you that little bit of shooting alongside the Flash Kits. It's not a lot of shooting, not reliable shooting necessarily, but you do have it. You are participating, and you have a lot of units spread around the battlefield in transports. Commandos are outside of your deployment zone. You're not getting hemmed in. You're not worried about scouting. You can kind of start filling up a flank. I like to see it. So let's see what he went into because he has tools to deal with vehicles, elite infantry, but it's not the most killy. There's no gas and stuff like that. So what was he dealing with? So first he went into the World Eaters. Having transports makes a difference here, that's for sure. But you do have the Angron. And here's where War Towers makes feels good, right? I'm sure you're thinking that already. We have a Lord Invocatus, and then we have the World Eaters Master of Executions with the Berserker Glaive. Another fight first guy, like we were talking about with the Death Card on another list earlier. We got to deal with that fight first, guys. We have 2 units of Jackals, followed by a unit of Khorne Berserkers. Of course, when you're playing with your SWAT teams, you got to be careful that these guys blood surge into you. Even if you charge them, they get fight first because of that. Master of Executions up here, so you got to be careful, but this is a unit that you would use effectively Flash Kits on, even if you could with maybe Bomb Squig effectively if you really felt like it. Not that I really recommend it, but the point is you do sometimes dwindle these down so that when they come into you, they're less effective, or when you fight on death, you can just clean them fully up. You do have a Rhino for that unit that's going to be nice, safely packed in there. That's where the kill rigs come into play. We have 2 fat units of Exalted A-Bounds. Love to see that. And then 2 units of Forge Fiend. Very, elite version of World Eaters. And I don't think that's the most effective. I think when you're running a lot of little units for World Eaters, like 3 8-bound, 3 Exalted, some Chaos Bound, and Kron, that's crazy because all those units can way punch up their weight class. And they can stage up easily when you're doing this. You're susceptible to fight on death. You're susceptible to Overwatch. You're susceptible to reactive moves because that unit can now that one unit won't get into combat, reactive to screens. It's like you're super susceptible to so much more stuff. which is where you're happy to have Kommandos in that play. These exalted 8-pounder aren't going to be able to run right up into you. He does have the 2 Forge Fiends. Your kill rigs doesn't, if it stands in the middle of the table and 2 Forge Fiends shooting it, it can die. If it stands in the middle of the table and, one of them shoots at it and an 8-pound runs at it, it's going to kill it. But if it's 1 Forge Fiend shooting at your kill rig, he can definitely survive, especially if it's a WAAAGH turn. And in response, shoot last cannons in response. Maybe the base Naga boys get out and they get lucky, they get a lethal. Not that it might happen, but it's a chance that it can happen. And really, you're just trying to push their killing units back and off the field, kind of delay on killing high ground as you kill these big exalted. Jackals can't really come back. They get picked up by snaggers when you kill break and get up to strength 6. You just be snaggers get up to strength 6 outside the wall and pick up these jackals in a nice skirmish. You would love to see that, as alongside the world eaters of Masters of Execution. So you kill everything else. Angron, you don't really want to prioritize super trying to kill him. If you do, of course, kill rigs help with that. So there are tools and beast snag. You see there's beast bosses on this list, remember? So you can help deal with kind of some Angron as well. It does take the combined arms factor though, because he can reduce damage, he can feel no pains. So just know that. That's why you kind of want to avoid him. But all in all, bunch of tools to kill that. We start with the kill rigs. Remember, these 8-bound are T6. That means if it's not a WAAAGH turn and your Snagger boys don't have a kill rig around, you're running them in trucks or something, they fight winning dudes on 5s. So having 2 kill rigs, you can give them the strength 2 different units up to that strength 6, maybe even compound it and make it strength 7 on one of those units. And then if actually punching up out of your weight class, putting that volume into the 8-bound, maybe even dragging them downside along with you. Of course, if not, those kill rigs can go up and give your knobs that strength threshold where they're now pulling down Angron and winning him on 4s. The war boss winning him on 3s. It gets really fun. Love to see that. So elite units of 8-bound armies of 8-bound like 8-bound world eaters like that aren't the worst matchup when you're playing War Horde. As for his second matchup, he went into Eldari Yernari. So there are some shenanigans at work here, my boys. We have Yavrin, a Death Jester, a Farseer Skyrunner, Kabbalite Warriors, Howling Banshee, Mandrake, Ranger, 3 units of Scourges, of course, because we kind of have all those Dark Lances, right? 2 units of Striking Scorpions. These are Infiltrators, right? Or maybe they're Deep Striking. I don't know. I forgot that. 2 units of Reavers, 2 Ravengers, 3 support weapons, which are D cannons, a Viper, and then a Venom. Okay, so very shenanigan, a lot of small kind of skirmishing units. Normally you would say this War Horde list does have tools for it. Yet we see with the scoring, we don't really know how this mission was actually at play that could have played a huge factor. Having that many Dark Lances is terrifying your kill rig. Outside the WAAAGH turn, they are getting picked up in that response. So you can your trucks. So you do got to be careful. There's Mandrakes in here for infiltration because we do have, of course, our own infiltrators on this list. You do have Mega Knobs, but Mega Knobs don't have like that big unit on this list you can really put them into and get your volume, your value and response, which is what we talk about in the verse with the world leaders. Now it's happening to him, the orc player, in this case, where this Eldar Ynnari list doesn't have a ton of actually doesn't have anything that's really valuable besides Jeffrey at 125 for the most points, I guess. So in that case, you really have to choose where you're getting the Mega Knobs and use them more as bait, as in they're going to run onto some objective, punch the one off it, really pressure the enemy, and then when the enemy responds with all its little skirmishing units to help pick them up with their combined factor united together, that's where your SWAT teams come into play. Your Beast Snagger boys, your Flash Gets, hopefully you can get both activations off right. You want them to shoot, you want them to charge, because that's really how you get value in killing these Eldar. You get to strength 6 with them from the kill rigs, because of course Flash Gets are strength 5, your guns are strength 6. That's why Flash Gets are super important right now in the meta, guys, where it is, because weirdly enough, there's a lot of T5 infantry, there's T6 infantry, but there's a lot of T2 infantry, and that's where you would feel them in this matchup. I bet you the Flash Gets were a huge factor to help him kind of offset that in the auto hitting las cannons, because Yavrin, those Ynnari want to play a bunch of shenanigan trick games. In his third game, with the 100 point, he gets the Gene Stealers. So he gets 3 color morphs. These are those lone ops. When you get close to them, reactive move, shoot you as if there's their movement phase. As long as they're shooting phase, as if it's their shooting phase. 2 units, 5 hybrids with auto pistols, followed by 6 units of hybrids with hand flamers. Didn't give me that time. I was like, hold on, I think there's more than 5. And then a Neophyte Hybrid, just one squad. 2 Goliath trucks, which we do have them up here. These guys, when you do fall back from them, you do have to take a desperate escape check. Not too many units on this list that are going to take like fallback to desperate escapes. More like the beast boss that are running there and just kind of punch through it. I'd like to see that. But they do have the Ridge Runner. So of course, these guys give you more AP. That does matter because G-Stars have a bunch of different kind of volume of kind of shooting and such. So making it more reliable to actually kill you does matter for our transport popping, because we want to keep our transport safe here, right? So he has 3 of those, I believe, or 2 of those. Then he has 2 units of 2, because these are 2 different. They're 2 little trucks, right? I'll show you the thing again in case you're not familiar. They're 2 little kind of like our orc buggies. Just imagine our orc buggies, but they can be in 1 unit, just like the buggies used to be able to do. Hence, but in this case, he has 2 of them in there, and then he has a individual one. Followed by Adelan Jackals, so 2 units of those, and then the Rock Grinder. So here's the Goliath Rock Grinder. Like I said, it is tougher with T10 with 10 wounds, but that's just enough that the Beast Boss can essentially one-shot that unit on the War Horde. If you're playing War Horde, he has a good chance of one-shotting it because you're getting sustained. You can put up Carnage. You can re-roll the hit rolls. You can fish. It can go off, but all in all, you kind of actually like that matchup. And then some piercing Gene Sailors, some fighting potential. But I like how this looks up for the Orc player. He has a lot of kind of just enough skirmish, and these units are just tough enough and soft. The ones that are tough enough are tough enough that you get your value back from killing them with your Orc list. But or did he lose this one? Did I lose that one? Did I just lie? No, this is a different. Did I just lie? Well, let me go back to my boy because I'm like, to pick the different list, right? Yeah, I did. Okay, haha. Yeah, boys, I had a different list to open at. No, sorry, I didn't have that wrong. I did not have that wrong. Yeah, 100. Ha, all right, 100. I was showing you a list one earlier. I was like, wait, did I go somewhere? That was the next list we're gonna cover. But like I said, see, 3rd game, he got 100 points on that guy. You like to see that with the War Horde list between the transports, the kill rigs feel really good. And then of course beast bosses feel really good. Beast boys feel really good. Commandos being able to get up and start punching these guys. They don't have to deal with their Overwatch either. Feels really nice when you're dealing with the Gene Stealers, because here's a list again. And of course you have the Mega Knobs that can go up and start bullying. So fat 100 points there. You have the nice bully unit with the Mega Knobs. You have the Commandos to put the pressure. You have the transports to go up the field safely. All these different the SWAT teams to skirmish, punch up, kill vehicles, kill some monsters, stuff like that. So I really like to see that. Really well-balanced showing list so far. It's showing its balance and variety of kind of data sheets, not really relying on any one Orc unit to carry the load. This is 4th matchup. This is 4th matchup where he went into the Imperial Knights. And of course, a lot of Orc players know. I always say Imperial Knights are the gatekeeper army that you have to be ready for, you have to be aware of. So we have Canis next, followed by a Crastus Knight and Tropes. Nice big boy right there, 450. We have 2 Helvrins, followed by 4 Warglaves, and then a Sisters of Battle Emulator, which we showed already what that does. It does mean so you don't have the benefit of cover. And it says that just units that have benefit of cover. That means it does count for the Knights unit too. Like if they're targeting the same unit that takes away cover. And then a Sisters Battle Squad. So it's kind of just support. Weird points. Pretty cool. I mean, he got that far. The fact that he met Ivan this far into the tournament, going into 3-0, means that it was quite legit, even though playing both of these 2 big boys isn't necessarily always the meta. But you do have to be aware of that Imperial Knight as a Orc player. This very much comes down to, is the Orc player keen enough to position up and take out the wall and punch up, clearing something like Canis Rex or clearing all the Helvrins and Warglaves on the wall. If they simply can't stage up and they get their transport topped and they get shot and then they get charged, they get killed. Game's pretty much over. This is a huge skill factor game, and is your list developed enough? Like I said, we see that Ivan's is, because he does have bosses, he does have kill rigs to help shooting and give police different strength, hopefully get lethals on different turns. Snaggers, of course, can go off and hurt these different war dogs with popping lethals at one turn. So there is ways that he can deal with it. It's just the execution that it has to be when you're playing that kind of War Horde list. Going, here we go with your Mega Boss, Mega Boss with this big unit of knobs to run into Canis Rex or a different kind of unit. Canis Rex, though, might find on death and kill you and take you out in response. You have to be ready for that, too. There's so many different things that can happen there. So then we have his final matchup, with he ended up losing this one, which was to the Blood Angels with the Gladius Task Force. So Blood Angels making their final appearances out here before they enter Death Valley. No, I'm just kidding. So we have an Apothecary Biologist, followed by a Librarian and Phobos Armor. 3 Ball Predators, all with these Ball Flamestorm cannons. These are just flamers, strength 6, ignoring cover. I believe they're -1, maybe -2, but they are just 1 damage from what I remember. Yes, hopefully. Then we have the Centurion Devastator Squad, goes great with Gladius. 3 units of these Death Company Dreadnoughts. I do want to pull up their data sheet because they're just kind of different. Of course, if they're not within the range of Chaplain, they have 0 OC, so they would have no OC. It shows they have 3, but if they're not within the range of a Chaplain, they don't get any OC, but nobody cares. Because in reality, what they're trying to do is they're trying to continue this fight, because if you read Frenzied Reprisal, it means if somebody hits them, as in they consolidate to a different unit, they punch them, then they get to fight you, and then they get to keep doing it. So it's pretty quite hilarious. So you just, it can end up just ruining you the whole game if you have too many Orc units near each other. We have the Eradicator Squad, an Inceptor Squad, another Inceptor Squad, followed by Infiltrators, a Librarian Dreadnought, teleporting. He can teleport units in this army as well for that pressure. He can fight quite well as 2. He's still a Dreadnought. Remember, he's durable as well, for Orcs at least. A Scout Squad, another Scout Squad for that nice infiltration to kind of go toe-to-toes with your Kommandos, but they're Blood Angels. They're Gladius, right? The one thing that you have to remember here that Gladius gives you the cool flexibility of as a Space Marine player when you're going into these final rounds is that he can do the stuff we can do, as in he's going to get to wall turn once because he could use that as his doctrine as he's playing Gladius. But he can run up and shoot you with flamers once if he decides. He can fall back. So you can put screens up, and then he can be ready to fall back with the screens of them that's surviving. So they do have the flexibility, even though Space Marines, do get a lot of the bad rap. And mind you, they have killing potential for anti-tank with the Centurions on top of all the flamers, the Ball Predators. So not only are they punching you with the respect of a Blood Angel, but they're shooting you with the combined arms factor of Gladius, which, like I always say, that's one of the ways you kind of beat Orcs is if you're really good with combined arms, because then you're really pushing their durability all the way off. Through, because you're hitting on both phases. A half diminished Orc unit didn't survive just your punching or just your fighting and help finish you or run up and keep playing the game. You cleared them, and then they're slowly had to move the field and fill up the gap, because after the while you're kind of slow as a basic Orc, just kind of meandering forward. So I can see how that ended up happening. All in all, 42 points there. Hard loss, but it happens. It happens. Overall, great job by Ivan. I thought he had a pretty good, well-refined, well-rounded Orc list. The fact that he took Kommandos into his list showed he was thinking ahead. He knew kill rigs were kind of easy to block in. You don't really want to put them in the middle or be forced to, so you do want to be able to take up the side of the terrain or the table and stage in the terrain with the Kommandos, and kill rigs kind of follow behind, give them their aura ability, a +1 strength, so they can become a early game kind of presence and threat. Then the Snaggers can follow and respond. The trucks can kind of reactively respond to things that are in the middle or that are pressuring you as well. And then the Mega Knobs are just the coup de grace, where they can come off from reserve. They can end up getting follow me lads, but they already have follow me, so then they end up here we going, and they cover a huge difference to one side of the field that you've now positioned your Kommandos in for already some kind of initiative. So all in all, there's a lot of ways you can play this list. I like it. Really well-rounded, a War Horde list. It shows a lot of the knowledge that's been found throughout Nexus that Orcs kind of need, things that we have weaknesses to that, most of the time people were saying kill rigs suck, and it was easy to overlook them because they're not nearly as durable as other units in the game and other type transports and killing units, yet their role of playing multi-purpose, multi-phase, shooting, transporting, supporting with strength or lethals, being able to possibly overwatch, being somewhat durable, decent OC, being able to themselves run up and punch on a wall does matter. It's just up to us to get it, and then hopefully that the dice gods may be in our favor where we roll moderately decently well. So all in all, great job for Ivan Andres for the War Horde. So if you're a War Horde player, you got snaggers, you got boys, get involved, get stuck in. Let's talk about the next get, which is my boy Curtis Wagner. So Curtis Wagner was this was Nova. This was the Nova Open. Shout out to my boy Brandon, who I might talk about his list at some point with the Dread Mob, who did great at this event as well. He actually did, ranking wise, he did quote unquote better. Just saying, right? But we're talking about Green Tide today because I've been diving into Dread Mob for several weeks in a row, and I wanted to give some life back into the Green Tide players because I know some of you guys are out there like, no, my detachment. Some of you guys are like, I don't care. I'm riding this crappy detachment out. So I'm showing you that other people are too, and they're making it work. So my boy Curtis Wagner made another green tide list, actually making an appearance. So of course, he went a little bit more typical, what I'm used to a little bit, yet he still fell off the well-known path. So let's take a look. He has 2 Painboys, followed by 2 war bosses, one with ferocious show off, one with brutal but cunning. Then he has 3 20-man units of boys, followed by 2 10-man units of boys, 2 10-man units of flash kits, 2 minimum size unit of Gretchen, followed by a commando unit, and then another commando unit. They are decked out. They have the burner, they have the rocket, they have power cloud, they have breacher ram. Both units are loaded out the same, of course, with the bomb squigs as well. 2 units of storm boys, followed by 2 trucks. That's his list. Quite uncommon of a War Horde list. Yeah, as we've seen from Lucas Troller, from the WTC list, sticking just straight up flash kits on your list to start filling up those wounds from having less moms and boys and having a shooting does make a huge difference. Having commandos so people can take the initiative and just punch your boys off the table does make a difference. So I did like it. Of course, I always think having Painboys feels really good for your durability factor, though they are really quite expensive. Excuse me, really quite expensive. 80 points for a 3 wound model is quite outrageous. I do hope they come down in points. They didn't need that double, kind of double hit increase. So as we've seen earlier with another green tide list, there is a chance that you don't need them, which is interesting. But I still feel good when I do have them because it just makes your boy squads way more durable, and you get another couple power call punches. You get the dirty syringe, stuff like that. So I like his list. The commandos are really cool leading the way. It does show again that commandos are becoming important because a lot of people are trying to stage up and play the game early. So let's take a look at my boy Kurt Wagner and what happened with his win path. So he did show to have 3 100-point games, excellent scoring, which is what we want to see. So he went 4-2. So let's take a look at his win path. So he went into Sisters of Battle, so that's the sororitas, but this was Penitent Host. We have 2 Ministorum Priests, followed by Morgan Valm, a Palatine, and then Trampasine Catherine. Okay, so he does have some fighting on here. He has 2 Sorors Rhinos, followed by 3 units of Arcoflagellants. There we go. But 2 of them are 10-man units, and then a 3-man unit. A Castigator, followed by the Paragon Warg, 2 Penitent Engines, 2 units of Repentia. Love to see it, and then Seraphon. So this isn't meeting you with the Bringer of Flames with a super killing potential that one would bring. That's quite devastating all in all. Yet, this is where you're super happy that he has flash kits that are damage 2 units going into these Arcoflagellants that are going into these Repentia units as well. You have something that can actually overwatch and make you feel pretty good in that case. And I love to see that he has this different tool factor and he's not just going boys, because those units running into a unit of boys would be devastating because they have the volume of punches. I believe they have twin linked, so they can wound boys better as well. It gets pretty crazy if they can just get 3 shots of boys as well. And they have the commandos as well. So I love to see that these are on the list, but as an orc player that he has commandos followed by flash kits and then boys, he actually has this spacing out potential, then the I kill you with shooting, and then I run up the board and start charging you and touching your transports. Really like to see it. He put up a 100-point game there. And what's up, Brandon? And I already gave your shout out. I did mention your shout out. So yeah, you did great. We'll talk about your list one day too, but you did good. He did quite well, even I think ranked higher than Kurt's list, but that was a dread mob. So we're talking about Green Tide today. That's the reason why we didn't cover Brandon for now. But as for his second matchup, a shout out to you, Brandon. Great job. We have the second matchup. We have a Eldari list, even though they just cut the head off of what this is supposed to be. But we can see as an Artark, it has 2 Warlock Skyrunners, followed by Guardian unit, 3 5-man units of Rangers, Swooping Honk, Shining Spears, Shining Spears, 2 Wind Riders, and then Crimson Hunters. These Wind Riders do have the potential to just start picking up boys, be super killy, but you have the flash kits. You really do have the flash kits in that case, and it feels really, really nice. Like I said, 20 in the flash kits, 2 big units of bolt Kommandos. You can start putting the pressure up on them and letting the the Eldar player know that I'm coming up here. You're not going to overwatch me. They have to actually respect you running up and even potentially charging them, because you're really going to put the hurt on them if you did. So pressure is a huge factor. You can actually stage up and defend those boy units because you can take up so much board control with those Kommandos. But you do have to know what's killing here. In this case, what's killing is your Wind Riders. Quite killy. As for that, it's a skill thing of just placing your flash kits in the right place and have the right pace of game. Great job by Kurt Wagner for that. But let's take a look at his third game where he ended up picking up his first loss, which was against the Thousand Suns, which is just, devastating damage and shenanigans. So we have Exalted Sorcerer, another Exalted. We have 3 of those, followed by Disc of Zeech, Exalted Sorcerer, Magnus to Red, a Thousand Suns Demon Prince, and then a Thousand Suns Sorcerer. So, of course, they have the ability to slow your movement from that. I believe the Exalted Disc of Zeech. He doesn't close to you for that. But we also have the Thousand Suns Demon Prince, which is a little different. He has uppy downy with his Ethereal Stride. So we already have the movement shenanigans in Thousand Suns that they already have, but then you have this Demon Prince that's running around trying to do it as well. He does have still Demon Prince profile. He's still quite killy. You can't literally let him go free, but the fact that he's uppy downy on his own means that he's going to. And then the Sorcerer. So then we have, let's see, it's 4 units of 5 Rubric Marines, followed by Mutalix Vortex Beast, Cultist, and then a Forge Fiend, and a Zangor Enlightened Squad. So a somewhat uncommon just because the Demon Prince, and there's not so many of these Disc on Zeech Sorcerers running around the battlefield, and not as many Rubric Marines. Maybe one more is what I'm commonly used to. But he made it work. It was quite functional, and right here he ended up taking down our boy. Not sure what necessarily went wrong here. It could be just that his Kommandos didn't have good staging units, and he was able to get kind of lines of fire on them and pick them up, and then in that case now you don't have any pressure and you have to slowly meander into the Thousand Suns and getting killed. Could be that he couldn't really threaten Magnus to that degree. So there's that too, right? When you're playing too much of like this War Horde of just a bunch of different units that aren't really killing and punching up, Magnus might actually be like, well, I'll just avoid getting hit by the flash hits, and then I'll just run into your dudes, your 10-man units, and pick them up and pick up your Kommandos and then run away. So he can systematically destroy your army and not be super scared just that he's going to get whittled down only, right? It's like, ugh. So I can see how he lost that. Thousand Suns actually do have the volume and the killing potential to really take down Green Titleists, as they've been able to do it even before we got nerfed. So he goes into this 4th game where he gets a 100 points, where he goes into Dark Angel, Space Marines, Gladius Task Force. So he has Apothecary, followed by Azrael, Chaplain and Terminator armor, and another Chaplain and Terminator. 2 units of Intercessor squads, followed by 3 Deathwing Knight squads, Inner Circle Companions, a Land Raider, but this one has God Hammer Last Cannon, so it's not the Redeemer. A Predator Destructor, 2 of them, followed by 2 units of Scout squads. Of course, these Deathwing Knights can be a big factor because they do have the potential to kill your boys. But if you're simply just rolling enough saves and they're not killing you fast enough, you're still out OCing them. You're still out OCing them. You're still faster than them get the initiative. And your Kommandos can stop them from just straight up dropping into the mid-objective turn 1. No real good targets for your God Last Cannons, I guess, right? Because, yeah, there was nothing really good on here. Kommandos allow you to have your board control, get your boys up and stage them where they are. Try to soften the blow of the impact with minimum good charges and effective charges, and slow their dwindling and scoring. Oops, I just put my face up in there. As really this army is just hoping to stand in place because it does have Deathwing Knights and these Land Raider these Inner Circle dudes. And then besides that, Land Raiders, Predators are just sitting back kind of shooting. So what happens if I just drown your Deathwing Knights and bodies and then I use my flash kits to kill your Intercessors and all your other scoring units? You're just not scoring anymore, and I just outdog you. So that's what happens there. Ragnar put up 100 points on that. Not necessarily like insulting the Dark Angels players. It's one of those things that having that many boys, Dark Angels, you can just roll not good enough with the Deathwings. Boys survive. They stand there. Get points. Do it again. Flash kits kill everything else. They keep doing it. So then he goes into his 5th game where he ended up losing this one. which was against Andrakari with the Sky Splinter Assault Force. 3 Archons. Ooh, he's going light with characters already. Followed by 3 units of Cavalry Warriors, 2 Raiders, 2 Venoms. Court of the Archons. He has 3 of those units. Followed by 2 Chronos, Ravengers, Reavers, 3 units of Scourges, and then a Tantalus. Very unusual Dark Eldar list. A lot of these actually kind of killing things and not sitting back with a bunch of Dark Lances other than what comes on your transports, which is only these Dark Lances. These Raiders that have the Dark Lances. Interestingly enough to see there, he went for his full killing. Yet when you're going into Flashkits, boys, and then Mandos, he actually has enough units in this case to run up and do it. Chronos for 50 points, super cheaply good trades. Where something like even Kommandos end up getting just cleaned up by them, which is a little sad and unfortunate, but it can happen. So I can see how you ended up losing this matchup. It's where your flash hits can save you. Let's say you just Overwatch and all of a sudden they just pop the transporter. They shoot this unit coming in. Awesome. Or you rolled like booty and they didn't, and then you just got picked up and charged. So that can definitely happen as well. So shout out to him. 70 points, still a respectable win. I'm not sure how that went. I just know they actually did have the killing potential and volume of punches. Weird off-putting skirmish units that are too cheap to trade out that could survive. And you'll only be rolling one wounds in one spot. So, you just dice seem to be a factor there in that mid matchup and just getting beat up by so much stuff. But last round, he got a 100-point win there, and he went into Imperial Knights, which, like we said, Imperial Knights kind of lacked combined arms actually with volume, not with quality of hits, but with volume of hits to really clean up all the boys effectively, unless you just plop 120-man unit right in their face. So you have Canis Rex, and then you have a Knight Lancer, so he's just running at you. Not good for him in the long run. 3 Helvrins, a Knight Morax, and then 2 Warglaves, followed by a Cladius Assassin. So again, like we said, I think even a 10 million flash has a solid chance of really hurting one of these Arbinder Warglaves if he doesn't outright kill it. Like they're not killing, the boys can actually survive this matchup with just having too much bodies and making a bunch of saves. It does require the Orc player to be smart with these Kommandos. The units can jump out of the terrain, remember, through the terrain, right? These Knights can, but you pre-measure and you go, well, this is where you can end up. I'm going to make a odd shape. We'll just say a T-bone shape. And now you can actually land in this path. You can't land in this building. Therefore, I still dictate where you go. That's really how you use these Kommandos to kind of hold back the stuff that you want to kill while you stage up and clean and stand safely. And then you go on a wall and you run into them, beat them up, you reroll fights, you reroll charges, get better charges, you jump into their backfield, you pressure them, whatever you can do to really start killing them, because it really is just like a grudge match when you're going against Imperial Knights. When it's go time, it's go time. And then if you kill them, you win. And if you don't, then they just systematically slowly start picking you up. So shout out to him for putting up 3 100-point games, followed by an 85, and then 2 losses in there, going 4 and 2. Still respectable for the Green Tide. This is actually about where you can expect the Green Tide to go when you're a good Green Tide player right now. Even though it's good to see that they're not like in a losing factor where they're like a losing detachment that just kind of sucks. Let's just say like Monster Crusher for Tyranids. I don't know if that's actually losing bad, but I know it's not one of the favorite detachments. Hypothetically, I know how it works. To just bear with me. But all in all, it's like you can expect it to do moderately well with Green Tide. It is still a stat check kind of gatekeeper army. If somebody builds the tools into their army or is playing a more meta army, they actually have a good chance of just beating you up and actually killing you. Still very fun to play, as it really does make you take advantage of the pile-ins, the consolidations, the regenerating movements, the shenanigans of the weird boy, the shenanigans of tagging stuff that shouldn't be tagged. Bringing a lot of flash kits is definitely a way to really soup up the Green Tide in the current state of the detachment. So all in all, if you're proud of your Green Tide, I do recommend you kind of still run it. Just know it does run somewhere around a 500, we'll say like it can win, 3 and 2, it can go 4 and 2, it can end up going inverse where 2 and 4, 2 and 3, you can lose a bunch of games too. Because it is a high skill kind of thing to play. You're against the clock, you're against your lower back, you're against enemies crazy on different armies and knowing their rules and not putting yourself in a dumb position, putting enough stuff on objectives, tagging, pre-measuring a lot. hugely important. But if you love that way to play, you get a lot of taste and volume out of it. I love that with the Green Tide and what people are doing with the Green Tide in this weekend. So shout out to Kurt Wagner. So, of course, that's what's our list of this weekend's WAAAGH Tactics performing list. We got to see Green Tide really make his appearance. Of course, it was just a couple of really exceptional players, but that kind of how Green Tide works, because having that many models is a huge factor, and who really wants to take time out to play? I just didn't want you guys to be in dismay that there's no way to play them. I do think they kind of do reach their ceiling, even if you are a very skilled player with them, where you can still end up just losing games just straight up by getting out-killed. But you can still have a lot of fun with them. Still, at the end of the day, War Horde is exceptional for overall great stratagem, great army-wide rule. Goes with Orks naturally. That's why it's been an army-wide rule since essentially 8th edition. But if you want to play something different and even play against some of our weaknesses of high toughness armies, of not being able to interact with armies that are shooting at us, to be in Vect auras with someone like Bajorn the Fellhander standing in the middle of the table and making our strats more expensive in War Horde. People getting an initiative on from Dread Mob ends up out maneuvering some of those things, give you different advantages in that case, reactive movements, shenanigans, shooting, makes your Overwatch potent. So there are other ways to play Orks. Nothing's been set in stone. There are favored ways. There's generally the preferred and strongest way to play Orks. Yet we go through week in, week out, showing a bunch of different stuff from stupid Stampas to Gargantuan Squigons. I mean, not Gargantuan Squigons, not anymore. Gorkanauts and Morkanauts, Killicans, Cement Guns, Ludas, Flash Kits, whatever you think, Kommandos, people, all these different units that when I made my tier list, even had to give them enough love, or people in general making Ork tier lists didn't give any of these units kind of credit. People make them work. People find their way to be. So play what you want to play. Just know what is favored in that way that you're going to play it. That really helps you, and from there start adding flavor. But if you're really just trying to get stuck in and learn it, there are ways we can help, that have been kind of figured out, between Cult of Speed to Dread Mob to whatever it may be, from the Hunt. So check out our Discord. Shout out to the Great WAAAGH for everybody that's doing great, and shout out to everybody in chat. Of course, remember we have Space Marines 2. Space Marines 2 is coming out, gets. So I'm actually thinking about streaming that live. So if you're interested in watching that, gotta be cool. Of course, I'm looking for some gets to get stuck in with. So if that's one of you, let me know in the Discord. And of course, like Brandon said, squad of one Commando and Zog is goated. I think just playing the game early and getting stuck in early, taking up that board presence is goated. Very necessary for reserves, for scoring potential, for actually lasting 5 turns, which is more of the favorite way to play Nexus. So I'm on board with you right there, Brandon. Right, great job again at Nova. But there's always one thing to keep in mind: you get is don't cross our wall, because we not get